HubSpot has been making a huge improvement both to their platform and their market share, especially upmarket. When we started Lean Scale, I'd say about 90% of our book was on Salesforce. And now about 50% of our book is on HubSpot. So I know they've made a huge change and huge improvements. I'm curious, why are they seeing so much success? And I know your opinion on this. Why should people be going with HubSpot over Salesforce?
Well, you're right. I do have a lot of opinions on this. But really, I think that uh, Salesforce is so easy to over engineer.
Hmm.
There's not a lot of guardrails. You're almost encouraged to over engineer it with only four standard objects, I think. And then everything else is left up to you. Where with HubSpot, there's some more guardrails in place, which some people view as limitations. But really, I see it as a guide to stick to what's standard, really think out your process and build something that moves quickly, especially for your go to market team and essentially your revenue process.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will maybe see something as open source or flexible as better, but I've definitely seen a million Frankenstein Salesforce instances, and HubSpot tends to not let it get that bad. Anytime we go in to clean up a HubSpot instance, it's not a big deal. It's usually some duplicates, maybe changing some staging. When we get into Salesforce, I mean, we've seen loads and loads of Apex code and workflows that conflict with each other and don't work. It definitely creates this playground where I think a lot of people aren't even qualified to build upon. Um, and I also think something that used to be a really big differentiator was the integration ecosystem. So before it'd be like, hey, everything integrates to Salesforce, so I'm going to go with that. But now I think that's completely caught up with HubSpot. I can't think of any tools that we use that are go to market specific that don't connect with HubSpot.
Absolutely. You're going to find the biggest players in any category use both. So what's the difference?
Well, I think to make it tangible, not everybody has seen the ugly Salesforce instances that you and I have seen and how bad and how off the rails it can get. I think it'd be really great if you gave a couple examples of the worst of the worst that you've seen.
Oh, how fun. Okay. So I have a friend who's a sales leader. And this is maybe the most bonkers example that I have. So she had a Salesforce architect who had been there for something like 27 years or something crazy.
When
Um,
Salesforce was invented.
yeah, yes. And I mean, this woman was, on the bleeding edge of Salesforce back in the day. And, she was brought in by Salesforce as like a trailblazer and someone that they really listened to. Um, but that was a while ago and things have changed. But she built custom properties, maybe even objects for all kinds of things for city and state, none of which were actually the city and the state of which the company resided in. So the sales leader wasn't able to segment her data by city or state.
Which is a pretty common thing.
Yeah.
Territories or just making sure you're calling people in the right time zone.
Uh-huh.
What else have you seen? What's some of the most like egregious Salesforce building that you've seen out there?
Okay. So I remember trying to pitch a solution for something, and to my executive sponsor, I used the Salesforce like object manager or data map, whatever that thing's called,
Hmm.
as the background for. It was kind of a close up of it, actually, as a background for my slide. And the first thing she said was, "Oh God, that's not our system, is it?" And I was like, yes, and that's my point. So it's really amazing how wildly out of hand the custom objects, the junction objects, the other custom object can get. Especially like you said earlier, a lot of Salesforce instances are started by people who are unqualified, who just bought it because that's the tool. They can understand the basics of what the buttons mean, they start clicking around and didn't bother to get the admin cert or anything else and created a mess.
Yeah, a lot of people wear it as a badge of honor. They say I'm an accidental admin, which means
Oh,
they didn't have anyone in house, so they just started building things on their own. And I think that's fine. If you're a startup, you're a couple people, if you don't have the funds to bring on a full team to do this, makes sense. And I think a lot of it is like there's a difference between someone who knows how to use Excel really well. They know all the formulas, they know what Excel can do, versus somebody who really understands financial planning and analysis. Okay, how do I take the skill set of what Excel can do and then build it in the context of finance? That happens a lot in Salesforce, I feel. Like there's a lot of people who I know how to build all these crazy automations. I know I can throw in a custom object. I know how to relate it to the other objects.
yeah, it's so dangerous building all these custom objects without really planning. And HubSpot kind of prevents you from getting out of hand so quickly. That's what I like about it. It throws up those red flags of like, hey, you have some of these as duplicates. There's a lot of those tools. And that's something that I think is almost under-engineered just in Salesforce, the tool. I was shook when I found out that Salesforce doesn't have this baked in. You actually have to buy another third-party tool to see where your data is being used. So in HubSpot, you have like your property, and it says it's being used in this report, in this view, in this list, whatever. But in Salesforce, who knows where your property is being used? If you delete it or if you change it, I know I had a property that was integrated and synced with my HubSpot instance, and I was using it to report to investors. And for about 6 months, I had no idea that it was changed in Salesforce. Nobody told me because they didn't know I was using it. It happened to be TCV. So it was pretty important.
Pretty big deal.
Yeah. And for 6 months, we were just reporting the wrong number. Nobody knew that we were using that number. We didn't know that they had changed that number. So that is wild to me that that's possible in that tool.
Yeah, a lot of times people will bring in third-party tools like Sonar to measure and manage how the field's interacting, what might be impacted if you make certain changes. And to think, oh, wow, I've built something so complex that I need another tool just to visualize the complexity that I built means maybe you're taking it a step too far.
Yeah. Yep.
I think another thing that happens too, if you're on Salesforce, you know that it can do anything. It really gives you this paradox of choice where you just have so many choices to make and how you can build it that it almost becomes overwhelming. And then you start going down a path of building something, you're trying to meet the business needs and the requirements, but there's just a million different ways to do it. Where HubSpot really does keep the guardrails on, like we've been saying. And one of the ways I really like how they do this is just out of the box reporting. So you can report to goal, which is not native in Salesforce, which still blows my mind. You get like the lame gauges, but I can't see like month over month goal reporting. So you can report to goal in HubSpot, and the way they handle conversion and cycle, it's just out of the box. Once you start using it and data starts feeding into it, you can report on this right away. Where in Salesforce, and we do this all the time, you have to build custom fields and custom automations to capture stage movement, to capture when something's converting. Then you need custom reports that are not simple to build. Like we need actual admin or architect level people to build these reports to make sure you're getting the conversion and cycle data right. So just to get basic go-to-market reporting, bookings to goal, pipeline to goal, what's my conversion rate, what's my sales cycle, that takes immense expertise in Salesforce, where in HubSpot, it's right out of the box.
Yep. It like surprises me that it's called Salesforce and not, I don't know, like accounting force. Because it should be a tool that is thought for or built for go-to-market first. And it's really almost difficult to make it efficient for that team.
Yeah, it's definitely turned into a beast. Why do you think people stay on Salesforce, or why do you think people end up going towards Salesforce when they have such a good option in HubSpot?
I think part of it is just kind of what they know and their comfort level. I do think that HubSpot, I've had a leader say, well, I haven't evaluated HubSpot in 5 or so years, and it definitely can't handle what we need. So that right there is enough for me to like, okay, well, if you haven't evaluated it in 5 years, then you truly don't know, because it has massively changed in 5 or so years.
No,
It's not the same tool.
and they've made huge inroads. I mean, they're
Yeah.
over $2 billion in revenue. They're taking Salesforce market share, especially in B2B tech, and going up market. They're making serious progress there. So if somebody hasn't, I know that impression is really common. They think, hey, no great company was built on HubSpot. Well, before Salesforce, no great company was built on Salesforce either.
Exactly.
So I don't know if that would be a reason to stay on like Siebel or spreadsheets.
Right. So I think that's one thing. It's just kind of like the safe bet for someone who hasn't looked at it. But also, I do think there is something to be said for just like the employee market of Salesforce. There is a literal force of people who are their sole skill is building Salesforce environments. So they're huge advocates for this. And then, if you're in a acquisition type of business, then that's probably what's going to be easiest, is to use Salesforce and then migrate other businesses into your Salesforce environment because they have a Salesforce environment. So I can see those 3 things playing out to keep you on Salesforce.
I think the labor market one that you brought up is super interesting because you're right. If you're in a business, you have a Salesforce admin, that person, all they know is Salesforce. And also because of the complexity of Salesforce, it kind of demands having a job around it, where HubSpot, you might not need a full-time HubSpot admin to run the whole CRM. So I do think there are people who may be trying to influence or fight for their jobs. And that's why, like when Lean Scale started, immediately we got put in the bucket of, oh, you're a Salesforce integrator. Like you're an SI. Like, no. And we had to beat the drum saying we are not. Yes, a lot of the work happens to be in Salesforce because people choose to do that, but we are tool agnostic. And I think any proper revenue operations, marketing operations professional cannot tie their career to one tool and cannot tie their career to one set of technology because it's changing at the most rapid pace anyone has seen in a long time.
Totally agree. I feel like I am obviously like a HubSpotter, but I'm more tied to the process of how I design a revenue operations process and make sure that it's in line with driving revenue faster. And then how can I use the tool that we have or tools to apply and make that process faster, rather than how can I force my people into whatever tool we're using. And that's kind of the old school way, is you're stuck with Salesforce, you're stuck with, whoever the original architect was. It's really their mind map because they did whatever they wanted. And you're forcing your people into that process. They're data entry people, and that's their process. So now the new way of thinking, especially with AI, is how can the tool help influence their process and make it faster? And the tool shouldn't really matter that much.
No, it shouldn't. And I can give a lot of examples. When I first started, ZoomInfo was the tool in enrichment. Now we recommend Clay. Outreach and SalesLoft were the tools for sales engagement. Now we recommend Ample Market. Chili Piper was the newer one. Now they're pretty established, but maybe Lean Data for lead routing. Now we recommend Default because there's new tools that are out. So I'm a HubSpot fan now, but if there's something new that comes out, I know one of the CRMs we're really excited about is called Adio, and it's AI first. I think a lot of these AI native built companies are just going to offer richer feature sets. So if something comes out that's better than HubSpot, I'm going to be recommending that.
Yep. Another reason people stay in Salesforce is it is so expensive to stand this thing up and painful. I've been in a situation multiple times where you can see that it would be a better option to just start from scratch, but there's no way you can convince upstream that's going to happen, because they've already sunk so much cost into it. And it's really like it's that sunk cost fallacy. And you'd think that everyone could see it, but they can't. There's an architect, there's an admin, maybe multiple admins, several developers, sometimes several consultants around. That bill that we're paying Salesforce and have already paid Salesforce is usually several $100,000 per year. And letting go of that and just saying goodbye is unfathomable to most. So you stick with it, as painful as it is, and just keep fighting the fight. But I don't understand why.
Yeah, and I think people are mainly fighting to justify the decisions that they made. I don't want to look stupid. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I spent millions of dollars on consultants and headcount and tech and everything to get this off the ground. So it must be for something. But as we know, and that happens in any context, sunk cost, if you're going to keep getting more cost on that, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
So the quicker you can cut and make a change, the more benefit you'll get. But I know it's hard. And normally it's only going to come when you get a new revenue leader in, a new CRO, a new CMO, and they kind of have license to say, hey, that wasn't my idea, so let's cut that and move forward.
Yep.
So I think it makes a ton of sense, like when somebody's starting out, hey, HubSpot, it's pre-built, it's got the guardrails for you, it's going to get you everything you need out of the box right away. Is there a moment where you feel like, hey, HubSpot really doesn't have enough horsepower to take on this type of organization? Is there an inflection point where you need to start making a change?
I used to think so, but I'm starting to doubt that more and more, especially with the amount of third-party tools. I mean, you can hook on a data warehouse. You can hook on whatever third-party tool you want to fill in the gap, and that's pretty much the point of Salesforce. So what's the difference there? And really, like, what business is so complicated that you need hundreds of custom objects, which you can buy in HubSpot, that needs to be that complicated where your sales team can still understand it, which
Right.
I haven't met a sales. I love my sales reps, but that's too complicated for a human.
Well, and we don't want them to being professional Salesforce users. We want
No.
them selling.
Yes. So no, I really think that it is the tool that can go the distance. I think that the biggest pro for HubSpot is adoption. And I've seen it so many times going from, I've flip-flopped. I've seen like the same sales team flip-flop tools from Salesforce to HubSpot and back again. And the adoption rates, it's crazy. So trying to get them to use Salesforce versus trying to get them to use HubSpot makes their life easier in so many ways. The task manager alone, Salesforce has never attempted to make a salesperson's life easier day to day. They have third-party tools to do that. And to do that, you have to go to another tool and another tool and another tool. HubSpot's all in one. You go to your task manager, you run your day. There's even more workspaces now that are making it cooler and easier. But that makes their sales process faster. It makes the marketing to sales handoff faster. It makes the sales to customer success process faster. It's your revenue process is faster, which is the point of revenue operations. So to me, it's like no brainer. That's what I want, a tool that makes it faster so I can get more revenue and make more money.
Right. And some interesting stats on adoption. Average adoption just across the board, 40% is what's reported on Salesforce user adoption, where around 80% adoption for HubSpot. And I think it's when you make the system easy, you take out a lot of the bloat, you take out things that you don't need. I think it's going to make it easier to drive those up. And it is important. I don't think, some people might be hearing that and think like, okay, well, whatever, like just use Salesforce. It's not that big of a deal. If I had to work somewhere that made me use a PC, I'd be very upset. And every single day that I woke up and opened up my PC, I would loathe using my machine and not like my job. And that might sound silly, but the tools you use, the equipment you use matter for the job you're trying to do. And, vice versa, when we bring people on to Lean Scale, we say you bring whatever device you want because I know how important that is. And we're very, very intentional about the tools that we use to make sure they're user friendly. So it changes the whole experience for a rep.
Absolutely.
Something you mentioned earlier, which I think a lot of people tend to use Salesforce for, and maybe it made sense 10 years ago to do this, they have kind of turned Salesforce more into a data warehouse rather than a CRM. And I think that's where a lot of the complexity is coming from. But what do you think about that?
I absolutely think that's true. I've experienced a lot of pain from that. I think that's really true. And I think that gets super dangerous when you don't have some data governance in place and the guardrails to treat it like a data warehouse. When you have, that's kind of where you have this, like, is it Salesforce? Is it support force? Is it accounting force? If it's a data warehouse that's built for one team versus the other, it doesn't act like a nice, neat data warehouse. It acts like fire tornado warehouse.
Well, and you're normally not having proper data engineers build it out.
Yeah.
It's Salesforce admins trying to build out a data warehouse. Rather than if you start with something like Snowflake, then you're going to have a proper data warehouse engineer come in, build it out the way it's supposed to be built out. And then you have the flexibility of getting whatever data you want in there.
I think that is part of the problem too with a lot of these Salesforce instances not being able to use Agentforce and AI tools. They're in so much technical debt right now that they're like, oh, our system is really complex. Our data is crazy dirty. We can't really apply AI to it because it's so messy. The AI can't make sense of it. So they're not using it. Where in HubSpot, like you said, like I have a punch list of what to clean in HubSpot, and I have nightmares about some of the Salesforce instances that I've tried to clean up where you have a team of people with layers of punch lists of trying to untangle things to clean up. It's impossible almost. We're using AI because it's not that crazy of a cleanup, and the AI can decipher it. So I think that's a big problem, is that it's being used as a bad data warehouse.
It's a bad data warehouse with dirty data. And for anyone trying to leverage AI, like you alluded to, you need to have really, really strong data, clean data. And the most important aspect of any AI tool is the ontology. How's that data structured? How are you feeding learnings to that data model? And if you don't have it cleaned and structured well, then you're going to be training a poor model. Well, I think probably people stayed on Salesforce or needed it to get to that next level of scale because there weren't as many easy data warehouse solutions out there. There also wasn't a good talent pool for that, but I do think that's changed quite a bit. So if you're in this mindset of like, oh, we need Salesforce in order to get to an IPO, maybe not necessarily. Before, you probably needed Salesforce because you kind of needed a pseudo data warehouse. Now you may need a HubSpot and a data warehouse instead of, oh, we need to throw everything into Salesforce. So Jenna, how did you end up getting in the position to where you're passionate about HubSpot? You've seen some of the worst Salesforce instances. What was that progression to get you to your career now?
Yeah. So I actually started as a kid. I really loved Excel, which is so weird.
I played video games, but Excel's cooler.
I was not allowed to play video games, so Excel and PowerPoint, those were my video games. But then, in college, early career, I was into marketing. And I really believe strongly in that kind of new uprising of marketing ops people transitioning into this RevOps role. I think that's such an important trajectory because marketing often, especially marketing ops, gets left out of the RevOps conversation. I've seen it happen. I've been that person. So we really see it from the beginning and then have that perspective all the way through. So I love seeing that happen in the industry.
You know what's ironic about that? I think any marketing ops professional I've worked with, they're more technical, they're more experienced, they're more comfortable with the data and the tools that are used than 9 times out of 10 RevOps professionals. Every time I meet a marketing ops person, to me, they're like a better breed of talent.
Interesting. Oh, I love that. I love that. Good. Keep going, marketing ops.
Yeah.
But I really think that's so important. I've always heard, especially like I came content, PR, I've kind of done everything in marketing at this point. But I've always heard like you can't have both sides. You can't be a creative and into numbers. And I think that's so silly because that is what I loved about marketing. And it was like the perfect combination of creativity and scientific thinking because you're trying to understand what someone else is thinking and how you can kind of get inside their head and create something that will draw their attention. So that's what I love about marketing. That's what I love about RevOps and creating a process that will work for someone else and translate that into a system.
So what were the steps you took to where you're at today? I know a lot of people who listen to our channel are aspiring marketing ops leaders, revenue operations leaders. What did that look like, and any advice you'd give to anybody early in their career?
I started in agency, which I really recommend early in the career.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you get so much experience so fast. And it can be a grind. I mean, if you work for a good agency like Lane Scale, they'll take care of you. But
It's still a grind.
but it's such a good grind because you get to see into a lot of different companies. You're solving problems quickly, and you just get such a wide breadth of what it looks like. Then I went into in-house life as a content writer, kind of went up through that, marketing director, events, director of marketing ops in private equity, did some more like contracting and agency on the ops side. And then now I am head of marketing at Sorban.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I think your trajectory of starting an agency and then moving in-house, I think something that's influencing that a lot as well is AI augmenting a lot of those junior roles in-house. So there used to be more junior roles at tech companies, and I feel like a lot of those have gone away. And it's been replaced with somebody maybe middle or further in their career, powered with some AI tools and capabilities. However, I think agencies, because they kind of need to make that arbitrage on like salary to what they're charging their clients, they need a young workforce that's early in their career, and then they can train them up and give them the tools and then turn them into operating like a top tier professional right out of school. So I think although a lot of the roles directly in-house in tech are going away, entry level, I think we're seeing a ton open up in agencies, and that's kind of becoming, hey, start there and then move in-house later.
I think that's such a great move. I wouldn't change that at all in my career. So
I love it. Well, this has been super insightful. I think this is like one of the age-old RevOps, marketing ops questions, tale as old as time. Should I go with HubSpot? Should I go with Salesforce? How long can HubSpot hang on? When do I need to move to Salesforce? And I think the answer to that now, after the conversation we've had, is you don't have to move to Salesforce. Combo HubSpot with a good data warehouse, and it's going to meet the needs you need to go from seed to IPO. And the capabilities that HubSpot has put into their platform have really given them the opportunity to move up market and be a force to reckon with. And I think Salesforce really needs to watch out.
absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Well, thank you, Jenna. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much.